Firstly, TTIP won't come into being unless member state governments agree to it. So they have the ultimate control of saying no if they don't like what's in the agreement. Will it force them to privatise? No, but there is a question: if a government decides to privatise, say, aspects of its health service, would it be able to bring these back under state control if TTIP was in existence and, say, an American company had bid for that section of the health service? Would it forever have to stay out of the private sector? And these are issues that are still being debated in terms of the TTIP negotiations. But nothing in TTIP would force privatisation.
That's one of the key questions that's been asked of everyone that's involved in TTIP, and certainly from my committee as well. The short answer is we still don't know, and we won't know until we see the final text. But we're seeking lots of reassurance, and from my point of opinion, and probably the committee's point of opinion, we're not seeing that reassurance as clear as it should be. So will it mean more of this or more of that, of less of this or less of that? We're not sure, and that's the main point. When you're not sure, then suspicion seeps in and creates fears.
Well, I think what I took from tonight is that even when there are a lot of reassurances about what might be in the treaty, although of course nobody knows what will finally be in the treaty, you're still entering a strange territory where a lot of major decisions which really affect people's lives in the EU member states and in the United States are essentially going to become part of what is to a very large extent a legalistic process. And I think there's an analogy with what often happens in local government now, which is that local governments may listen to the people, they may hear what people want in terms of not selling off a particular housing estate or preserving a particular building for a certain purpose or whatever, and they may acknowledge the force of the arguments that people are making, community groups, all the rest of it, good engagement, but then there is a legal framework, something to do with tendering, something to do with the finances of the council, something to do with the structures within which they operate, which forces them to make the decision which is not the one that the people want. Now, of course, you can say that that doesn't have to happen. You can say that you're structuring the treaty so you hope that it won't happen. But the fact is that once you introduce a kind of legalistic framework like that to the decision-making of national governments, I think you open up a substantial danger of that. And I think that Europe as a community is already at the point where it can't afford the sort of allegation that it's being governed top-down, technocratically, and can't afford to listen to its people. The current situation in Greece is about a struggle to listen to the people of Greece, despite the fact that what they're saying, in a sense, breaks the EU's financial rules. Now, if the EU and the US governments were caught up in an even more complex and technocratic tangle of trade rules, that kind of situation would risk arising more and more often. So although in general I'm in favour of free trade, and in general you don't want to see completely unnecessary bureaucratic barriers to people doing business, I think we need to be really careful about the complexity of the legal framework surrounding this and the hems that they would put on the ability of national governments and the EU as a political entity to actually do what their people want them to do.
The problem at this stage is it's unlikely to be black and white. There will be regulatory convergence. The issue will be on what form does that take, and do I feel the form that it takes is enough to get rid of what does exist, unnecessary red tape, to get all of that out of the system, but at the same time allow health, public services and other things to be protected. So we want to look at the balance between the different aspects of the text, and also, obviously, if it turns out to be a really good deal for Europe in terms of access to the American market and so on, we have to weigh that against other concerns. So, I mean, I know it sounds like you're almost avoiding the issue and you can't say now whether you vote for or against it, but the reality is this is going to be a very complex set of negotiations. It's going to run to 28 different chapters. We're going to have to take our time when it's concluded to try and analyse and assess what it means for the average European citizen, and on balance, is it a good or a bad deal? And then on that basis, and to be honest, in part, it will probably turn out to be a feel at the end of the day, whether this is good or bad, and that's how we'll, in the end, cast our vote.
If the text doesn't answer that, then we'd be very concerned about that. Our next point of call would be to our MEPs, and expect our MEPs then to vote against the entirety of TTIP. In that sense, if it doesn't protect the things that we think should be protected. So not only have you got the layer of bureaucracy between the UK government as the member state negotiating with the EU, we've got devolved parliaments in the UK that need that same input, as well as to ensure that the reservations that they seek are the ones that the UK seek, and then preserve the things that we need.
Well, the interesting thing about TTIP, for all the controversy surrounding it, and perhaps even the reason for the controversy around it, is it's a more open and transparent set of trade negotiations than we've ever had in the past. So firstly, we have access to what's called the negotiating mandate. That's the document the member states gave to the Commission to negotiate on. We have rounds of discussions periodically. All the negotiators get together. We're now in the 8th round of negotiations. Obviously, documents are prepared in advance of these rounds by the Commission to outline the European position. We get to see these documents and to comment on them. We have a meeting with the chief negotiator before each round, and immediately after each round we meet the chief negotiator. And the point of this is not just to be informed, although that's important. The point is also to influence the position that the Commission is adopting, to say to the Commission where we think they're going too far and where we think they should be pressing harder, where if we think they're making too many concessions to the Americans on an issue.